In 2002, Chris's last season, were there any thoughts from you about, from Chris, about this is going to be my last year? I know he had talked about this. Did he say, I need for you to stick by a little bit closer because this is going to be it at the end of this year? Can you talk about the transitional from A to B?
It's probably more of a work in progress than it is this year we're going to do this. Naturally, as we got closer to the end, that when Chris was going to step down and knew that, he talked about it a little bit more. But it wasn't ever this date, this season, this year would be it. But I think it got to the point where he knew eventually it was going to happen, and it was more of a gradual transition that way. All the different tasks he did and didn't do, and I mean, went over that, and naturally having me do maybe some extra stuff or some other stuff that he was doing just to kind of give me a feel for it. And again, that's all the preparation. I mean, just like he was preparing the team, he was preparing me. I mean, just doing the same thing that he always did, and he could do it so well. So it wasn't just, no, there wasn't a date and time. That was never the case, but it was just when it does happen, when this does happen, whenever that is, let's start preparing for that.
In my conversations with Chris, because at this day, in 2003, because I had known Chris since the early 90s when we started, the one thing that became very, very apparent from my chair now, is that he's watching an adoptive son, because you're like his son. Nothing against Tim or Matt, but you're the chosen one. You're the extension of his life and the extension of what he has created. And I remember distinctly, you guys are getting ready to play for the state championship in your first year. And he is as giddy as a schoolboy and as excited as it would be if it would have been Matt or Tim putting that headset on and leading that team out here. That's a very unique relationship that he reciprocates back to you. There's no question that you respect him off the charts, but I think if you don't, from my chair getting to know him, he talks about you just as if he is proud as Tim and Matt, his own flesh and blood.
Well, again, it's back to family, and that's the bigger component of what Penn football is to most of us. It's close, and naturally, none of us will be as close as Matt and Tim and Chris and Jane, and you know what I mean. They're immediate family, but the football family, that's important, and he's the creator of this program. To me, he'll always be the head coach. He'll always be in charge of the CEO of this program as long as I'm around. That's for sure, because he's the guy. Mm-hmm. I'm just the caretaker of the program. That's why I see my job. It is amazing what he's done for all of us, and I say that as a boy, as a player, as a coach, as assistant coach. It's he created something special that we're all enjoying the benefits of, and he's just a great friend. And the unique part of that, the unique part of Chris has never, in that time, since 2002, he's never told me I should do this, ever. Now, I ask Chris what to do a lot. I ask Chris's advice a lot. I like hanging out with Chris. I like talking to Chris. I like breaking away, and I always have. We laugh a lot, and we have fun together. And I've always liked going to clinics and driving with him and talking with him, because Chris is one of those guys, if you don't know Gees well enough, he's one of those guys, if you just sit there, and I tell our players this because I have Chris come back every Thursday and talk to my players. That was one of my biggest concerns when Chris got out, because these guys wouldn't have, and all these guys coming up, wouldn't have the opportunity to meet the man that I knew. And that bothered me. So Chris is there all the time, and he's around. This is his program, and he should be around. He's talking to the players and the young boys, and and everybody else, and they understand what's going on, and that's the experience I want them to have. But Chris he never told me, Cory, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And I'll ask his opinion. He'll give me an honest answer when I'm asking, about a certain thing. But he's not calling me up and second guessing or anything like that. That's, again, the beauty of Gees.
When you became the head coach, when you officially signed your contract, and you sat down, I don't remember if there was a press conference. I remember trying to remember what happened. That escapes my feeble 60-year-old brain at this point in time. Did you go home and digest that? I mean, how did you digest that? Knowing how you felt about Chris, and because the buck stops here, Cory.
Well, I mean, just
you're the head coach of the Penn Kingsmen.
Yeah,
that's a lifelong dream, man.
Well, I mean, maybe not my dream. My dream was to be part of it, and I still think that's, again, being on the outside looking in, or vice versa, being on the inside looking out. It's about the group. It's about everybody doing their part, and whether that's the head coach or whatever position coach you are, or the player, that's all part of it. And it says head coach on my door, but in reality, all those guys, the assistant coaches, they're the head coach of that position.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody does that. There's a lot of people that micromanage every part of the game. Now, you need to understand what's going on in every part of the game, but you're going to hire great people, motivate them, and let them do their job as long as they can handle the job. Don't do a job they can't handle. But as they move along, give them more and more opportunities to progress. Again, all that stuff we're talking about right here are things that I learned from Gees and how he managed the team and how he managed the staff. So I knew there's no way in this world that I could ever, or anybody could ever, replace Chris Geesman, and I wasn't going to try to do that. I knew what a great program he had created, and we wanted to try to keep that thing going and do things very, very similar. I can remember Chris asking me about offenses. What are you going to do on offense? Are you going to take over the offense like I did, or are you going to stay on the defensive side of the ball? And we talked about that. We talked about staffing, and he said, Cory, one of the biggest things that's going to happen, it's already happened. Chuck has resigned a year or so ago. Your dad and I are resigning this year. We got Don, who's going to be resigning too, and Art and everybody. I mean, that's a problem. He said your biggest challenge is going to be building your new staff. And he said that's a huge responsibility because, Lou Holtz used to say, one good staff member, one good assistant is worth 5 good players, and I get that because of what all those guys do, and especially in this system, what we ask them to do and expect them to do, and then the responsibilities those guys have. So I think that's what he was getting me ready for. He said that's going to be tough. He said when people, that's going to be tough, and coaching coaches is a lot harder than coaching players.
That is the single biggest traditional dynamic that changed in the Hobart program. They didn't make the transition from A to B that you guys were able to do. That's Paul Condry's sidebar opinion, is that they put someone in charge who did not, who might have been one of Don's guys, but the guy who Don wanted to have was Steve Balish. I mean, Steve didn't want the job, and Charlie got it, and nobody liked Charlie. And once again, it comes down to that family. When you have somebody who's an out, he may have been a brickie, may have been an outside guy, but no one loved him and admired him like they did Don or TK or whatever the case may be like. And so, chemistry is huge. At least we saw that. Okay, getting back to 2003, some of the emotions that you were feeling in 2003, the first football game as the head coach of the Penn Kingsmen in 2003. What was going through your mind as you're getting ready to come out there and realize, wow, I'm the coach of the Kingsmen?
Well, first of all, we had to make a bus trip, and we had to go play Valpo.
Yeah.
It's a good friend, Mark Hoffman, a guy that he was on the staff when I was playing in the All-Star game, and I think the world of Mark, still do. We talk, he's a great guy. He's one of those guys, that that's the beauty of the business we're in. There's so many great coaches in high school football. Like we were talking before about those staffs with the Carmel and the Snyder and the Hobart staffs and the Penn staff. And, you get away sometimes and you migrate towards the same people. And what you find out is, like I tell my players when they graduate and go to college, don't be surprised if your roommate and one of your best friends is one of your arch rivals, because they probably are geared like you're geared. The reason they're your arch rivals is because they play at a high level and they're motivated, and I think champions think different than other people, and they migrate towards each other, and same thing goes in coaching as well. So played Mark in the first game, and it was an exciting game, and national emotions running high, and for me, and again against a friend, and they had a good team and a team that would, that unfortunately beat us the last 2 years in the playoffs.
What kind of pressure did you feel?
There's pressure there, but I'm telling you what, the pressure to me, and a lot of people think the pressure is the outside pressure, and it's not. I guarantee you, the pressure you have doing your job in that book, and every year in the Football Digest, and every radio show you do, the pressure's not from outside. People would think the pressure, it's the pressure you put on yourself. Exactly. And the scale and the bar that you set for yourself is far higher than anybody else could ever set for you. So I don't worry about that kind of stuff. I try to please, myself. There's the pressure. I put the pressure on myself, and that's again a little bit different than some people think, but that's what I believe.
You were inducted into the Indiana Football Hall of Fame as a player and as a coach. So I want you to talk about the moment that happened. You got the notification that, and what was it like looking out into the crowd when you were giving your induction speech? And I remember when I was inducted into the Indiana Sports Writers and Sportscasters Hall of Fame, and this is a sidebar because my mom was dying back at the nursing home. My dad was there, and I had invited a bunch of coaches and friends and whatnot. I remember the emotions of getting up there when you're being recognized by your peers. Tremendous amount of emotion. I've always asked people about what was that moment for you, because there's something that's special about with a bunch of people who you hang out with in your job, say you're great at what you're doing. So I want you to take me back, if you will, and share that Hall of Fame moment with me.
Really don't like those kind of moments, to be honest. I mean, I had a hard time with that, to be honest with you. Yeah. But again, I think the reason that's there, or that's maybe bestowed upon you, to be honest, has a lot more to do with the people that you've surrounded yourself in life than it does about yourself. I mean, I played for great coaches in high school and college. I played with great players in high school and college, and I work with great coaches and have great football players underneath me. I'm telling you what, they make somebody like me look awful good. I mean, and that's a long day's work to make me look good, for crying out loud. So I'm going to tell you what, if you think it's about yourself, you're wrong. And again, back to the beauty of football, the great game of football, and it takes an army to pull it off.
And it also goes to the transition to where I want to go next, and that's family. You've created the same type of family environment in your own home as you have through Wally and Marilyn and Chris and Jane, where everybody's involved. Gary turned out to be a tremendous high school football player, did a great job when he was at St. Joe. Daughter, I mean, so let's just talk about the family, the importance of the Cory Yeoman family has had on the Penn football program.
Well, I think probably the greatest thing that my dad and Gees ever taught me about coaching was something that you marry well, you got a chance.
Yeah.
And I look at Jane, I look at my mom, and I look at my wife, and man, we are lucky because we have married the way we've married. We've got great wives.
Outkicked our coverage.
But long outkicked our coverage, and our wives deserve a heck of a lot better than us. But I'm gonna tell you what, they've done a great job. And you're talking about pressure. We're on the sideline with them guys and everybody else, and they're up in the stands with everybody else. And they got a tougher deal than we have. And there's a lot of late nights. There's a lot of early mornings that they have to deal with a lot of stuff that we can't because we're gone. And again, they've done a great job. And naturally, the three of them and most of the coaches' wives are pretty close as well because they spent so much time together, whether it's been traveling to our games or hanging out, and Sean and my mom and Jane and all the other coaches' wives going to games. I mean, that's a sorority that's special to itself, and because there is a lot of pressure and there's a lot of responsibility in what takes place. But I mean, our wives are great. I mean, Jane, when I was a student, Jane's naturally a great science teacher, and Jane used to tutor me in science, my science class. Great lady. She used to be the head cheerleading coach and coach my wife in cheerleading. Great coach as well. You take a look at their two sons, Matt and Tim, and they're outstanding young men and get great families in their own right. And again, my mom and what all she did, and my dad was a 3-sport coach for a lot of his career, and which meant Mom was doing a heck of a lot at home with us when Dad was gone and doing his craft. And so again, Sean has done a great job raising Gary and Aaron and doing all the stuff that she has to do, as well as being a nurse. And so we're so fortunate, and our wives deserve a heck of a lot better than us. Again, I can't say that enough.
I want to close with this segment and talk about Gary Yeoman. Compared to Wally raises Cory, Todd Trent, okay, that type of dynamic. And now Cory raised Gary to become a Kingsman. He was a great player when he was in high school. So I want you to take me back what you learned from Wally as a dad and as a coach. And what did you do in raising your son, Gary? Was it similar? Because it's a different age that you were raised in the 70s. We have social media, we have all that kind of other stuff that didn't exist now. So let's just talk about, I'm guessing, I think it's safe to say your favorite Kingsman of all time is Gary Yeoman?
Yes.
So let's talk about raising Gary Yeoman and how neat it was to have him play for you.
Well, that was one of the great experiences of coaching, whether you're head coach or assistant coach, to have your son play for us. And we've had some great coaches' kids in that long line. And you know what? Things change from era to era, but I think the base fundamentals, just like in the game of football and in parenting, don't change. Hard work ethic, being respectful, doing your best, getting along well with others. All those things are important, and I think how that gets put across. That's what was helping my dad with my grandfather, and then naturally myself with my dad, and Gary and then down the road. I think that's important. I think how the base fundamentals of how you do things and how you work, and again, you try to model those things. Now, trust me, he deserved a lot better teacher than me, for being his dad. But I did the best I could, and we worked extremely hard, and I'm very, very proud of him and how he handled himself.
You almost have to have two lives when you're the head coach of your team. I run into that myself, where there's that quiet side, there's that funny side that a lot of people don't get a chance to see. There's that guarded side that you have to have when you're in the community, and there's a private life that you want to try to have, and try to have some balance. Speak to a young coach today, and you look back on what advice would you give to a young coach on keeping the balance, keeping the family as a priority, keeping your teaching as a priority, your coaching, and trying to keep it all together, as well as being under the microscope?
Well, yeah, it's hard. I mean,
It is.
you're out in the public eye, and that's part of it. But again, you're teaching. You try to model. You try, whether you're in the classroom or you're on a football field or whatever field you're in. I think all of us have those responsibilities, and we all try to do the best we can, and we try to model good behavior. And naturally, all of us fall short. We all make mistakes, and again, that's no different than that game of football that we all play. We fall short, we make mistakes, and we learn from it. We pick ourselves back up, and we go attack it again more the next day. And again, that's how we're built.
Chris says the one thing that stands out in his mind in reflecting back on his career is that we laughed every single day at work.
Well, I'm telling you what, you've got to have, thick skin around there. I mean, there's jokes, it's nonstop. And we tell the players that too. I mean, I like to laugh at practice. I mean, it's intense. Most guys get it when there's a time for this and a time for that. There's a time to be, how can you guys be so focused when you people out, come out and watch us practice, whatever, they're focused at times, and the other times they're laughing and goofing around. They just need to know when the times are to do one or the other, and I think that's important. It's tough. You have to have some fun, and it doesn't have to be so regimented. You're stiff. You need to enjoy the experience and enjoy the ride, and I think that's important.
Donnie Smith says that in working for Paul Condry that it was zero fun, sir.
Donnie's lying.
He says it was, how can anybody be more intense every single day at their job as you? That's what he said to me.
Well, I think Donnie had a good time too as well, though. You know what I mean? And I saw him laugh quite a bit myself, so I don't know about that.
Oh. All right, let's cut it.